Intelligence Committee. Congressman, being on the Intel Committee means you might get briefings on this sort of thing. So what's the latest that you're hearing about what's actually happening on the ground in Ukraine?
Well, obviously, I can't talk about anything classified in those briefings, but I'll tell you what we've all read publicly, and we've seen just in the last hours, is that Putin continues to do the dictator dance, which is to look for every excuse in the book to move forward with this summit, which is critical between he and Zelensky. You know, he often won't even mention his name. He's demanding different locations. The bottom line is we need to hold Putin accountable, not just for what he's done, but for making sure moving forward we can get to a ceasefire, we can get to peace. And I think the only way to do that, if he does not move forward quickly with this summit or with a ceasefire, is with very strong sanctions.
And that sanctions package is sitting in the Senate, sitting waiting for the House, and there is massive bipartisan support for it. But there's always been an undercurrent when President Trump talks about Russia. Specifically, he's bringing it up again, speaking about the 2016 election and Russia's involvement yesterday. I want you to take a listen to that.
Despite the fact that we had Russia, don't forget, that's not easy to overcome when he sees these whack jobs. And he knew it was false because he wasn't involved. Not to say he's an angel, by the way, but he knew it was all a made-up thing.
To be clear, I know you know this, our intelligence committees have confirmed Russia did interfere in the 2016 election. Right. But it also comes as Trump is saying he wants to roll back mail-in voting after a discussion with Putin. So are Democrats prepared to counter that if it's done through Congress or even if it's just an executive order?
Just a point on the 2016 election.
Sure.
You know that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, was part of the conclusion that Russia meddled in the 2016 election.
Yep.
Right. So his own Secretary of State was part of that. We should not leave that out. Listen, I think the president looks for any attempt, to obfuscate or divert attention. And listen, the Alaska summit was just a case of that. Instead of actually following through with his threat for and demands for a ceasefire and for sanctions if a ceasefire didn't happen, we saw the president back off all those things. We need to hold Putin accountable. We need to get the parties to the table. We need a ceasefire, but also we need a long-term solution here with security guarantees, not just from the Americans, but of course from our European partners. To me, that's how you in the long term keep Putin in check. He's only somebody who responds to strength.
I don't want to shortchange your August recess, but Congress is set to return to Washington in just about 2 weeks. You might be greeted when you come back by these National Guard troops that we've been seeing around town. What are you being told at this point about security in the district? And what do you have to say about Trump's federalization of police here?
Well, we haven't been briefed on the Guard. Listen, I have no problem with making D.C. safer. That's not something, that's something that I have an issue with. I think the key is what's the strategy? Are they coordinating with D.C., with the government there? Is it being done properly or just haphazardly? Where are the Guard being stationed? Is it just around monuments or around the city? The key is if you're going to increase safety, then let's actually do it and have a plan and have a strategy, not something just for show that this president, often does.
And based on what you've seen so far, which do you think that it is here?
Well, it's hard to know until I get a full briefing on exactly where everyone is stationed. The key here is coordinating with Washington, D.C. In the president's budgets, he's consistently cut the budget to Washington, D.C. for things like security, right? So listen, if he wants to invest more and encourage more security in the city, that's terrific. But the bottom line is how are you doing it? Is there a plan or is this just for show?
I also want to get you on some news of day now. National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard revoked the security clearances of 37 current and former national security officials. They include some of former President Joe Biden's cabinet, as well as officials who looked into 2016 election interference. What's the impact of that kind of an action?
Well, I think anytime you're playing games with the intelligence community, it's a very dangerous thing. You do not, these are people who are not political. They're just doing their job to protect our great country. And then going after them because you didn't like that they were involved in some investigation that you didn't agree with, which is clear in the president's case here with the 2016 election with Russia interference. He doesn't like the fact that these intelligence officers were involved, so you're going to revoke their clearances. That's just a political game with something that you shouldn't play politics with. So I obviously strongly object to doing that in any case, by the way, against anybody who's in the intelligence community.